The Mario and Luigi series is a series near and dear to my heart. One of the first games I ever played as a child was Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story, and since then I've been invested in every new entry of the series. Or at least was, for a while there. As of today, there have been 5 mainline entries spread throughout Nintendo's handheld consoles, 2 remakes, and... What's this? An upcoming game in the vein of Mario and Luigi Brothership? It is quite crazy to imagine the fact the last new Mario & Luigi entry was over 9 years ago, and that we're finally getting a new one for the first time on a home console. I thought it'd be fun to look back at the series that shaped my childhood, and perhaps rank some of its aspects. And what better way to start than with the different special attacks that you obtain throughout the game. Now, it's no mistake that the Mario & Luigi series has one of the most unique battle formats out there. In each game, they always gain special attacks at certain points, collaborative efforts that deal way more damage than solo attacks, and look very flashy to boot. These attacks usually cost BP or SP, often requiring precise button inputs, stylus inputs, or, my favorite, gyro controls. Throughout each game, special attacks always innovate and change, so I thought, why not rank all of them in a tier list? For this tier list, I'll be ranking every special attack on an S to F scale, based on their utility, overall design, pizzazz factor, and how much damage it does to the enemy. SP cost is a small factor. S tier attacks should always be in your arsenal, while F tier attacks belong in the trash. I will be including every Bros attack, special attack, Bowser Brawl attack, Luiginary attack, and trio attacks. Advanced Bros moves will also be their own ranking, and I will also include the remake Bros / special attacks for a good measure, to see if they stack up to their original incarnations. I would love to grow this channel, so it would mean a lot if you dropped a like on the video and subscribed as well. Not much more to explain, so let's dive into the rankings. We'll start off with the Bros attacks from Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga. Bros attacks are collaborative moves between Mario and Luigi, utilizing their overworld abilities they learn throughout the game. They usually require well-timed button presses, but do much more damage than their solo attacks. Mario and Luigi earn 4 Bros attacks each. The first one you'll likely to use is Splash Bros based off the spin jump. Mario jumps on top of Luigi's head, and the two go spinning into the air, smashing down on a single enemy. This does quite a lot of damage just being the first Bros attack. The only downside is its inability to attack spiky enemies reminiscent of jump attacks, but the cons are heavily outweighed by sheer damage output and cheap cost of only using 3 BP. This gets an easy S tier. Advanced Splash Bros, rather than Luigi grab Mario's legs, has Mario himself drill extremely fast into the enemy doing damage. There is one extra button input in this version, and while it does less damage than the regular Splash Bros, its benefit is its ability to stomp on spiky enemies, doing double damage to them. It is quite helpful, but it is also a quite niche move, and is easily outclassed by later abilities, so this one will probably be in C tier. Bounce Bros is based off Luigi's high jump ability. It's similar in execution to Splash Bros, and the button commands are swapped, being B, A, B. From my own experience and through watching gameplay, the second button command of A has slightly stricter timing and most people end up tapping it too early. This attack does less damage than Splash Bros 2, and has the same weakness of not targeting spiky enemies. You'll likely be using this quite a bit to get the timing down pat though, so I'd give this one a B tier. In Advanced Bounce Bros, at the height of the high jump, the Bros separate and tumble into 2 different enemies. The button commands are pretty tight, and each individual Bro does less damage than regular Bounce Bros, but it is a great way to attack 2 different enemies at the same time, especially if they're both low in HP. I'd put this one on the bottom of B tier for its semi-usefulness on regular encounters. Chopper Bros is based off the Drill Luigi ability. Luigi burrows into the ground and boosts Mario into the air, letting Mario spin like a helicopter, hitting a single enemy multiple times with his hammer. I find this attack very easy to execute, and unlike Splash Bros, Chopper Bros can attack spiky enemies with ease. There's also a ton of broken things you could do with Chopper Bros if paired with the correct badges, and I mean one-shot kill final boss broken things. Chopper Bros gets another easy S tier. In Advanced Chopper Bros, Luigi burrows directly under the enemy and pops out repeatedly, Mario hammering him back in each time. This attack is endless until you mess up, and does pretty good damage the first few hits, though the damage continues to half until it stops being very effective. While it is a serviceable alternative, and overall does more damage if you chain at least 3 hits, it does lack the sheer annihilation utility of regular Chopper Bros. This attack goes at the top of B tier. Knockback Bros is the next ability and utilizes Mario's mini ability. It's a very simple move that knocks Mario into a single enemy with Luigi's hammer. The button timing of BBA is very easy, and the attack does a lot of damage, netting this attack an easy A tier. While the previous 3 advanced moves were alternate attacks, I dare say Advanced Knockback Bros is a direct upgrade. Luigi repeatedly knocks Mario into the enemy until a button input is missed. Pressing A after Mario goes mini will start a loop of pressing B and A with proper timing. The damage halves over time, but even the initial hit is stronger than the original and is much better to use. S tier material. Fire Bros uses Mario's Fire Brand ability and it's really not that good. Mario charges up a bunch of fireballs by mashing A and lobs them at Luigi one at a time for him to hammer at the enemy. For the length of time this attack takes to finish, the fireballs don't do that much damage at all. You can get about 6 on a good attempt, and even then there are a lot of enemies that resist or are healed by fire. The only upside is using it on foes weak to fire, but you may as well use a different move at that point. Fire Bros will be our first D tier. I don't know who would use Fire Bros 28 times to learn its advanced form, but here we are. For this one, rather than Luigi whack each fireball individually, Mario stores them into one big fireball that he spikes into a single enemy for more damage. It suffers the same drawbacks as Fire Bros, but the big fireball does a heck of a lot more damage than the small ones. Plus, even if you miss putting a fireball into the big one, the small one will still hit the enemy. For being a small upgrade, it gets C tier, but that's all I'm willing to give it. Luigi's Thunder Bros uses his Thunder Hand to attack all enemies on the field with a strike of lightning. This attack doesn't do much damage, but if executed right will lower the enemy's defense, an ability no other move has. Keep in mind Thunder Bros can't hit airborne enemies, and take into consideration whether the foes you're facing are resistant or healed by thunder. It goes into the low end of C tier for its semi-useful ability. In Advanced Thunder Bros, Luigi burrows into the ground and hits an enemy from below with an electric shock. The attack hits one enemy but does more damage and lowers their attack. You could use this on bosses, but if you're good at dodging attacks, there's not much need for the pow down, especially since the damage of the attack is mid. C tier. The last 2 Bros attacks are unlocked via 2 secret scrolls in the Hammerhead Bros cave. Mario learns Swing Bros, where he grabs Luigi and swings him rapidly like a top to throw at a target. It is unique in the fact that it allows you to choose your target by waiting for the crosshair to align with the enemy of your choice. The longer you take to choose, the faster you'll go and the more damage you'll do, but the timing gets harder. The damage at max speed is certainly impressive, of course at the cost of possibly whiffing the attack. This gets a high B tier. In Advanced Swing Bros, after Luigi hits the enemy, both Mario and Luigi go flying above the enemy and spin around them to steal some items off them, be it a consumable, coins, or even gear and badges. This extra ability makes this version pretty much the superior, thanks to the shakedown, and I would give it a solid A tier for its usefulness, not counting its slightly difficult timing, of course. Cyclone Bros depends on how good your mashing is. Luigi hammers Mario Mini with B, and however many presses of A you can get in that interval will determine the strength of the Cyclone. This attack has several small attacks that rack up big damage, so it's important not to mess up any of the button presses, including each time Luigi collides with a foe. This attack also lets you choose the foes you like to hit via the arrow pad, and you can allocate damage any way you like between enemies. Advanced Cyclone Bros also adds an extra hammer swing at the end of the attack that requires 2 more time button inputs but can make enemies dizzy. Cyclone Bros ranks slightly above Swing Bros in the B tier. The Advanced also goes in A tier for its great damage, albeit precise button timing. Welp, those are all the Bros attacks, but how do they stack up in the remake? The remake separates the regular and advanced forms of the attacks, with the advanced forms now costing more BP, and the overall cost of all the Bros attacks being higher. Let's run through to see if anything's different with the remake's version of the attacks. We can put Knockback Bros in the same tier as its original variant. Chopper Bros is still as broken as the original, so it stays in S tier as well. Splash Bros and Bounce Bros, despite doing good damage, are outclassed by the other buffed abilities as the game continues, so I believe they are 2 tiers and 1 tier lower than their original counterparts. Speaking of buffed, a bevy of Bros attacks do much more damage at the cost of more BP to use. This includes Advanced Bounce Bros, Advanced Chopper Bros, Swing Bros, and both normal and advanced variations of Cyclone Bros, this one in particular doing way more damage than before. These all get bumped up a tier. Advanced Splash Bros, despite its damage, is outclassed as the game goes on, and so it remains in C. As for the remaining 6, let's discuss. Fire Bros has gotten a complete overhaul for the better. Mario creates a massive fireball by mashing A with his fire abilities. The regular Fire Bros sees Luigi whack the big one into a single enemy as it splits apart. The advanced one has Mario spike the fireball himself, but the spike creates a shockwave that does damage to all ground foes. Both variants are insanely buffed in terms of damage, and the shockwave in the advanced does not count as fire, so you only need to worry about the affinity of your intended target. Both these variants get a B tier for being way stronger and faster to execute. Both variations of Thunder Bros also have an insane damage buff as well. They don't guarantee stat buff drops, but the damage more than makes up for it. Regular Thunder Bros actually costs more than the advanced one due to its sheer damage and multi-hit capability. Regular Thunder Bros goes to the A tier, while the advanced goes to B. The only two attacks I believe are nerfed are Advanced Knockback Bros and Advanced Swing Bros. For the former's case, the attack is no longer endless and only hits 5 times. Each individual hit adds up to less damage overall, and the big problem is that the attack randomly targets different enemies. If not fighting a boss, this attack blows, and I think it belongs in the D tier. Meanwhile, while Advanced Swing Bros still gives coins and an item, the swing itself sacrifices damage as a result, and while the full attack's damage is about the same, I don't think it's worth the SP cost. At that point, you're better off purchasing gear in the store, so Advanced Swing Bros gets C tier. In Mario Luigi Partners in Time, Bros attacks take the form of consumables that can be obtained from stores or question mark blocks. While duo attacks require one pair of bros to use, often having a battle incentive if all 4 bros are present, quartet attacks require all 4 of the bros to use, but do much more damage. The green shell is a staple attack for all subsequent Mario and Luigi games going forward. This initial variation sees both bros kick a shell back and forth at a single enemy. It'll keep doing damage, and to keep kicking it back and forth, you must alternate between A and B. The shell goes faster and faster the more volleys you get, and can hit the enemy up to 16 times. If all 4 bros are present, the babies can also add to the damage by mashing their button when they make contact with an enemy. It's a very good attack to bring out if you want to take care of an enemy fast, and is also very cheap to use. I believe the green shell should go into the B tier. The Bro Flower is another staple in the series going forward. This initial outing has both bros alternating tossing fireballs at all enemies by mashing their respective button when they have the big fireball. While this attack spreads against all enemies, you can easily see fire damage doesn't do as much as other hitters like the green shell does. Button mashing for the whole attack can get a little tiring too. Normally the fireballs cannot reach airborne enemies, but if you're playing with all 4 of the bros, you can mash their baby button to lob fireballs overhead to hit airborne enemies. You mainly want to bring out Bro Flowers against enemies weak to fire, but this attack doesn't do much damage in general. Even worse is the fact it gets completely outclassed by another Bros attack that comes very shortly after you get this one. D tier. The Cannonballer is the first quartet attack that requires all 4 bros present. The bros and babies hop into the cannon and it will fire them to the top of the screen in a random order. The player only needs to watch the order they fall, and when each of them lands on the enemy, press their button. This attack is very simple to execute and does extreme damage to boot. I don't really have many bad things to say about this attack, and it's great against bosses. It gets an easy S tier for me. The Smash Egg is a duo attack that involves kicking an egg between each other at groups of enemies. Whenever the egg hits an enemy, it'll be launched back up into the air. The bro must hold their button down to prepare to kick it, and when it falls, release that button to kick the egg at the enemy. If all 4 bros are present in the battle, the babies can also hit their button to boost the egg's speed up to 2 times each kick to increase its power. At the end of the attack, the egg has the possibility of giving you an item or a bros attack. While this attack can target any type of enemy, it does target them randomly and sometimes doesn't release an item at all. The timing of kicking the egg can be a bit disorienting, especially since it arcs towards the top screen. I would put Smash Egg in the C tier. It's not as bad as the Bro Flower, but it is quite finicky to use. Remember how I said the Bro Flower would be outclassed? Enter the Ice Flower. That's right, you get it in literally the next area. For all intents and purposes, this functions exactly the same as the Bro Flower, but with ice. But what I will explain is the trait that makes it so much better. This item has the ability to lower the stats of enemies. As you chuck ice balls, enemies randomly get power down, defense down, or speed down status effects, which is incredibly helpful for battles. The best thing is it even works on bosses, so you should always pull one of these out at the start of the battle to make the battle much easier. This debuff ability is just too strong to not choose it over the Bro Flower any day, and I would put it into A tier for this utility alone. The Pocket Chomp is a very unique duo bros attack. The bros pull out a chain chomp that chases them across the screen and through the enemy groups. Whenever they pass by, they'll jump on an enemy on the field, and by now you know the drill. If all 4 bros are present, the babies will also be dragged along on the back of the chomp, and you can press their button to do a hammer spin and do a little extra damage. The chain chomp goes faster and faster, but can't actually catch you unless you make a misinput, meaning this is an endless attack. It's not too hard to execute, although the baby buttons generally get quite hard to time the later into the attack. If you press the wrong baby button, the chain chomp will get angrier and speed up. This attack is outclassed by a few abilities that are a little bit easier to use, so we'll put the Pocket Chomp into a comfortable B tier. Let's talk about the Trampoline. This is another Quartet Bros attack that uses all 4 of them. They'll bounce off the trampoline into the top of the screen and fall down one at a time onto the enemies. As long as you keep pressing the correct bros button, the attack will continue until all the enemies are defeated. The bros will fall faster and faster the more hits you land, but targets random enemies, so you have to be wary of what enemy the bro is landing on to time the button press right. It has the potential to do more damage than the cannonballer, but it is a bit harder to obtain though, costing more money, and due to the random factor, the trampoline will likely be in B tier right above the pocket chomp. Next is the copy flower. It makes multiple duplicates of our favorite quartet, and they will begin stomping on the enemy in quick succession in a line. The premise is very similar to the trampoline, but the timing is much faster in this version since you're dealing with multiple duplicates that are on the screen at the same time. I like the copy flower though for its sheer absurdity, and the fact it's also an endless attack that targets a single enemy. Perfect for boss battles, and taking away the need to identify the target. The copy flower would be an S tier for me. Our 9th bro attack is the red shell, which is a direct upgrade to the green shell. There are 3 differences. It does more damage, it's an endless attack that can keep being kicked to infinity, and if a target is destroyed, the red shell will begin attacking the next enemy in line, making it great to continue the volley. It's a respectable upgrade, deserving of a respectable tier bump in A. And the final quartet attack is the mix flower. Another flower, huh? It also has you chucking fireballs like the bro flower, but your goal is to make one giant fireball on the top screen between all 4 bros. Your goal is to keep it on the top screen by continuing to toss fireballs, and once you no longer can, the giant fireball will fall down and cause a massive explosion that does incredible damage to all the enemies present. There's almost no situation where an enemy will survive a perfectly executed mix flower. Most people stockpile this item for the final boss. It could get tiring button mashing, but I give it S tier for its sheer damage alone. In Mario & Luigi Bowser's Inside Story, Bros attacks are now called special attacks. Mario and Luigi have access to 10 of them, while Bowser has 6 of his own that he uses by freeing his minions. The Bros' first attack is the green shell, similar to the previous green shell. Both Bros kick the shell back and forth until it expires after 10 hits. Compared to the previous iteration, this shell is much easier to kick, the timing is more lenient, and the speed curve of the shell has been lowered, only getting truly fast around the last 2 hits. It also starts hitting the next target once you defeat an enemy, which is a nice quality of life change from the previous green shell. I'd put this one in B tier like the other one. This game's fire flower is a little better than the bro flower. The big fireball alternates between the brothers, although in this game fireballs are shot at a slower, more manageable rate, so you don't need to button mash as hard. Fireballs can now target airborne enemies, and at the end of the attack, both bros hold a big fireball, so you can mash A and B together to unleash a fire flurry. The damage is still small compared to later moves, but it's much more useful in the early game and can cause burn more frequently, so this iteration will go at the bottom of C tier. A new ability arises in the jump helmet. Luigi dons a helmet that Mario repeatedly jumps off of to gain momentum. Use the control pad to position Luigi right under Mario so he can land on the helmet, and after enough jumps, Mario will land on the enemy doing some solid damage. This attack is a matter of risk and reward. Even missing one jump will cause the attack to end with no damage dealt. Mario also goes all the way to the top screen when he jumps, which may throw you off when positioning Luigi. The damage is solid if it lands, but there are less riskier attacks later that do more damage, and because of that, I put the jump helmet in the C tier, slightly above the fire flower. The Yoo-Hoo cannon clones Mario and Luigi 4 times each and requires a quick memory. The clones hide inside 8 barrels and reveal their random placements. Once they hide, the barrels will go off one by one, and it's your job to memorize whether a Mario or a Luigi was in the barrel, pressing A or B in response. It may seem intimidating, but it's not too hard. A good strategy is to simply remember where the 4 Marios were hidden, and if the cannon that rises is not a Mario, press B instead. While it does target random enemies, it does much more damage than the fire flower and costs only 3 SP more, so the trade-off is good. I'd put Yoo-Hoo Cannon in the B tier above Green Shell. Good old Super Bouncer. I really do not like this attack. Luigi jumps on top of a giant pink ball and Mario tosses him into the air. As Luigi falls on a random enemy, you have to keep him on the top of the ball with the arrow buttons. This attack has average damage and can even cause dizzy to enemies. Doesn't sound too bad, huh? But there's so many issues I have with the Super Bouncer. Of course, the longer the attack goes, the more the ball starts spinning, and positioning Luigi on the top gets harder. The arrow buttons while positioning are very sensitive, and pressing even a smidge too long will cause the ball to spin even more out of control. There are too many ways to mess up this attack as well. If Luigi is under the ball, if you fail to press B when hitting an enemy, or if Mario misses his cue, the attack will fail. Since this attack targets random enemies, you also have to consider where Luigi is landing to time your button press right. Finally, this attack just takes so long to finish. It has to land 8 times, and even then it doesn't even do much more damage than the Yoo-Hoo Cannon, which costs the same amount of SP. All these things make me never want to use this special attack, and so it is our very first one in the F tier. I also have a few problems with the Mighty Meteor, but this attack isn't as bad. The bros toss a meteor into the air, and it will fall in an angle towards either bro on either side of the enemies. The bro must line themselves up right at the location the meteor will make contact, hold their button to charge up energy, and swing their hammer to knock the meteor into the enemies. This move takes a little too much work to deal with, not only positioning yourself in the right area, but having enough time to charge up energy for your hammer swing. The meteor also targets random enemies, another slight turnoff. However, this attack executes faster than, say, the Super Bouncer, and the hits themselves are pretty solid damage when the hammers are charged up. The meteor can cause power down to enemies, and even better, it will always give you an item if you manage to get an excellent, which makes it a good incentive to do well. For the few boons it has, I'm willing to put it into D tier. The spin pipe is a fun one. Mario and Luigi link arms and are encased in a giant blue pipe. As it begins spinning on the top screen, your goal is to track which bro is on the bottom of the pipe when it stops spinning, and press that button as it falls on the enemy. Similar to the Yoo-Hoo Cannon, you only really need to focus on who's on one end of the pipe to succeed in this attack. It takes a while, but the fact it concentrates all its damage onto a single enemy is very helpful when dealing with bosses. It also auto-shifts to the next target if you defeat an enemy, allowing you to get the most out of this attack. It's one of the easier, stronger attacks to execute, and I would put it in a good A tier, being one of the best. The next 3 special attacks are in a league of their own, and they all belong in the S tier. First up is the Snack Basket. A picnic basket opens and starts raining down food in rapid succession. Use the arrow buttons to have Luigi eat as much food as possible. Once he bloats up to a massive size, all Mario has to do is mash A to lift him up and throw him, and when Luigi is at the peak of his jump, press B to do a ground pound that creates a massive shockwave to all enemies without the randomness. While its only weakness is its inability to attack aerial enemies, the Snack Basket's sheer damage output still puts it in S tier, leagues above the rest. What's there to say about the magic window? Mario and Luigi will jump into a window portal for this attack. Windows randomly appear on both the bottom and top screens from the left, right, and center, with either Mario, Luigi, or both of them popping out of them. React fast and press the bros button whenever they jump out. Even though I usually frown on the random target attacks, there is just so many jumps into this attack, it outshines all the other options by a country mile. It's also endless, and with the right opportunity, you can do extreme damage and prove it belongs in the S tier for sure. The final special attack is the Falling Star, the strongest single target attack in the Bros arsenal. A giant star will begin rebounding off the walls of the top screen, similar to a DVD video screen. The goal is to chuck as many little stars into the giant star as possible, using the arrow buttons to aim the cursor, and mashing the button corresponding to the color of the star. After a certain amount of time, the giant star, along with any clusters of little stars, will all fall on a single enemy, doing incredible damage. For sheer attack power, this is very easily S tier. The SP cost is quite high, but it's great at taking down bosses and frequently lowers the enemy's defense, which allows you to follow up with a lesser costing attack afterward. Bowser has his own brawl attacks that utilize his minions in battle. All of these attacks use the stylus to attack, so get that touchscreen out to make the most of these moves. Goomba Storm has Bowser use his Goombas in battle, and has them all charge at a single target. While the Goombas themselves do little damage, Bowser can tap them as they charge to shoot fireballs at them and send them flying into the air. When all the Goombas are done charging, the burned ones will rain down on the enemy, doing some pretty sweet damage and causing burn. This attack is a pretty good demo of Bowser's damage output, and even if you do miss a few Goombas, it still does a hefty sum of damage. This attack is in B tier for me, as other attacks later do more damage, including the very next one. In Shy Guy Squad, Bowser curls up into a spiked ball, and the Shy Guys create a slingshot for him to launch off of. All you have to do is use your stylus to slide Bowser as far back as you possibly can, and after a bit, the shell will go flying into the enemy for massive damage. This attack only requires sliding the same spot over and over, and as long as you keep sliding through the whole attack, there is never any scenario you will not get an excellent. It can also cause the enemy to become dizzy, and is helpful in shaving a chunk of health off of bosses. Easy S tier. Koopa Core plays out like a game of Pong. Bowser's shell acts as a paddle, and the Koopa shells will regularly enter the field rebounding off of enemies like the green shell. The player can use their stylus to move Bowser's shell and keep the Koopa shells in bay, making sure they keep dealing damage to the enemy. It's fun and the damage does rack up, but I believe this attack is a little too gimmicky. It's very easy to miss a shell by nicking it from the side, which will knock it out of play, so you have to be really precise. I also find myself having to use my left hand to hold the stylus, since Bowser's shell is on the left side of the screen. If I use my right hand, my hand covers the screen. People may also find it tough to juggle 3 shells at the same time, so there might be too much visual noise on the screen. Finally, the fact this attack targets random enemies is not too hard of a knock for one of Bowser's attacks, but there are just better attacks that get the job done, and so I place Koopa Core in the D tier. Bob-omb Blitz is definitely innovative. The player can use the stylus to line 6 Bob-ombs up with the enemies. What's super unique about this one is that the player has the option to delegate damage any way they choose. They could choose to line up all 6 bombs with one enemy, or split the amount of Bob-ombs with each enemy present. The player has about 6 seconds to line them all up, and they'll charge on ahead. If you line them up right, they'll do huge damage to the enemy and cause dizzy. This attack comes down to your sense of vision and alignment. It'll also be tougher to land this attack on enemies towards the back, or enemies with a thin hitbox like the Bee-Hoss. I would put the Bob-omb Blitz in the C tier, but I cannot argue it's one of the more fun attacks to use. Magikoopa Mob utilizes the Magikoopas in his arsenal. A group of 6 Magikoopas make different formations with their wands, and the player's goal is to trace the formation with the stylus to power up their magic with Bowser's Flame. The Magikoopas make 4 formations before the attack ends, and if you nail each one, will do incredible damage and cause burn. This attack does tons of damage to all enemies present, and is also the strongest minion attack Bowser has access to. If not for its slightly high cost, I would probably consider this to be the best attack. I would put Magikoopa Mob in A tier. Of course, there's one ability that trumps all the others, and it's not a minion. I bet you know what I'm talking about. Bowser's final ability is Broggy Bonker, and it utilizes the shopkeeper Brock Monsieur's dog, Broggy. Bowser unlocks this move when he gets all 15 Blitties in the game. To use this attack, Bowser has to clean Broggy by rubbing him all over with the stylus. He has about 10 seconds to remove as much grime from his body as possible, and depending on the results, Broggy will attack accordingly. For the most part, this attack is go big or go home. Getting an okay or good rank will simply cause Broggy to lunge once for small damage. Great will make Broggy lunge twice, but you're aiming for the excellent. If you clean all the grime off Broggy, he will lunge at the enemy twice and do a body slam, which does incredible damage. Not only that, all 15 Blitties will also line up and attack one at a time, and after all that, you'll definitely see the true potential of this amazing dog. If you manage to get the excellent, this attack is definitely worth 20 SP, and once you have this attack, it might be the only attack you use against bosses for a sheer damage output. There's no mistaking this strength, and it's easily why Broggy Bonker is the best Bowser attack in the game. S tier. How do the remake counterparts stack up? Similar to Superstar Saga, a lot of the attacks in this game have been streamlined to be quicker or involve less button inputs, which overall improves the usefulness of the attacks. Let's start with the bros. The green shell requires only 6 hits and remains in the same tier. The fire flower remains in the same tier, though it's easier to launch fireballs faster. Jump Helmet and Yoo-Hoo Cannon are generally unchanged, so they remain in their tiers. Snack Basket is readjusted so the food, rather than falling in a line, falls in a spread at a slower speed. Falling Star lasts longer, and more star clumps can be created, but they do less damage. But both of these attacks still remain in S. Both Spin Pipe and Mighty Meteor require less hits, and I'd bump Mighty Meteor up to the C tier. The attacks that change the most are the Super Bouncer and Magic Window. Super Bouncer has a huge improvement. The ball is much less sensitive and only requires 5 stomps, the final stomp being a finisher attack that does much more damage, so I actually put this version into the C tier. I can't say the same for Magic Window though. This attack is no longer endless, so you'll be unable to continue dealing a monstrous amount of damage. This attack does have a new finisher to make up for it, but I would be inclined to use Snack Basket or Falling Star instead, which is why this version of Magic Window goes into the B tier. All of Bowser's deluxe attacks are much more straightforward, and the majority of them I left in the same tiers they were before. Koopa Core only has 2 shells on the field at one time though, which makes it slightly easier to use, so I bumped it into the C tier. Time to dream and Dream Team. In this game, Mario and Luigi have 5 Bros attacks each, equaling 10 total. In the Dream World, you have access to Luiginary Attacks, moves that use Dreamy Luigi's clones in various ways, and there are 6 of these. Let's start with the usual, the shell. But this time it's 3D and red? In this perspective change, the bros kick the 3D red shell into the background at the enemies, rather than from the side. For the last hit, an extra powerful finisher is added. Luigi also has a shell attack as his first attack, the 3D green shell. They both function identically, though while the red shell focuses on one enemy at a time, the green shell tends to target random enemies. While the shell is similar to previous incarnations, I find this change in perspective makes the attack take a little longer, and the attack doesn't feel as impactful. That's just me though. I put red shell in B tier and the green shell in C tier. I will preface this by saying Dream Team's iteration of the Fire Flower is the worst one out of all of them. In this version, fireballs grow in Mario and Luigi's hands at random intervals, and when they reach full size, tap the button once to throw them. This results in a very slow, clunky fireball throwing experience that doesn't look flashy or do much damage at all. After a certain period, both bros do get big fireballs in which the mashing can commence, but if you even miss one in the first part of the attack, you don't get the bonus time at the end. They really butchered the Fire Flower in this entry, and it belongs in the F tier. Mario's second move is the Bye-Bye Cannon. This attack shoots 3 clones of Mario and Luigi out of a cannon in a random order into the background. When they come back in the foreground, press the buttons in the corresponding order of the clones. If you get all of them, a bonus time will occur in which you press the same buttons in the opposite order. This part is easier than the first part, but I feel the attack lacks pizzazz, and that's another personal thing. Compared to later attacks, this attack doesn't do that much damage either. C tier. The Drop Chopper is probably my favorite. Mario and Luigi chase after a propeller and grab onto it to fly high into the sky. The player must use the gyro controls to move the drop chopper above the bros' heads, pressing and holding their buttons to keep them in the sky. Then you can choose the target you want to land on, and when you got your mark, press the button to slam down on the foe with extreme force. This attack does tons of damage, and also has a shockwave that hits all ground-bound enemies too, so it's a great S tier for me. The Bomb Derby requires very fast button inputs. Luigi carries a stack of bombs, and you must flick the direction stick right to throw the bombs at Mario, followed by A to whack it into an enemy. If you fail to whack the bombs fast enough, they'll explode in Luigi's face, so you always have to either be tossing or whacking a bomb any given moment to have enough time to finish the attack. It targets random enemies, but it can give the enemy dizzy, and does a lot of damage in general, having 10 bombs, so I would choose this attack quite a bit. It gets B tier. Next is the Sling Sniper. The beginning is simple enough, holding the circle pad down to stretch the slingshot. The tough part comes in aiming the reticle, which uses gyro controls. Once you have your mark, release speed to go flying into the enemy. You can crash through small enemies if you have enough power, and some large enemies have a weak spot that is denoted with a little star that makes hitting it extremely satisfying. This attack can be messed up at many points, waiting too long to sling, slinging too early, or missing your mark entirely. But this is a personal fan fave of mine, and I give it an S tier for the super damage it deals. It really does a lot. Jetboard Bash is another fun and exhilarating attack. It simply requires holding B to charge up energy until the board goes at max speed, and once it's at top speed, press A the second you pass by the enemy to do incredible damage. It's similar to a game of chicken, and pressing A too late will whiff the attack. But with the damage it deals, I give this an easy A tier. Star Rocket is another good one. I've been saying a lot of them are easy to execute, haven't I? In Star Rocket, the bros hop onto a giant star as it moves to the right. Use gyro controls to aim the star and collect as many little ones as possible, and when you reach the end of the path, both bros will jump off the big star with all the little stars in tow. Nailing both jumps will do incredible damage and give them a ton of pain. The gyro controls are not bad on this attack since it doesn't require too much tilting, and when collecting little stars, the big one stays at a manageable speed, giving you ample time to aim your attack. A tier for the Star Rocket. The Z Egg is Mario's last attack, unlocked by saving every Pilo in the game. The Z Keeper becomes part of the bros' arsenal, and they summon him in battle to shoot a powerful energy orb. As the beam of energy falls towards the enemies, the bros can accelerate its speed by lining the Z Keeper up with the orb, then pressing the button when they jump off to bash it with their hammer. If you can get at least 9 to 10 hits on this attack, you're good, and the orb will crash into the enemy, doing massive damage to all of them on the screen. Even whiffing this attack can still do a lot of damage, though if Mario or Luigi miss one hammer smack, they'll fall down, which will waste valuable time. It's such a powerful attack, so I would give it an easy S tier, but it does take a bit of getting used to find the perfect rhythm. This attack is extremely powerful, but for its relative difficulty, we'll put it in the A tier. In the Dream World, Mario has access to Luiginary Attacks that are performed with Dreamy Luigi's clones. The Luiginary Ball has Mario ride on top of a giant Luigi ball. Collect as many Luigi clones on the path as possible to make the ball grow, tilting the 3DS to steer the ball. The line is not too wobbly and only requires small tilts of the 3DS. Once the ball reaches the end, you can press A to kick it into the enemies. You can also steer it a little at this point, which allows you to choose the enemy you want to prioritize. Luiginary Ball is a good showcase to the Luiginary moves, and is also an attack I quite frequently pull out, even in the late game. A tier. In Luiginary Stack, Mario hops on a small stack of Luigis, and as he walks to the right, can keep stacking up more and more by jumping with the right precision. However many Luigis you've acquired will all bounce into the air and fall on the enemies like a shower. In general, I find this attack a bit tough to nail. You can steer Luigi's jumps ever so slightly, but it's usually not enough to get all the Luigis in the center. This attack is also not as hard hitting as the ball, and failing to jump early enough during any stack will cause them to simply disappear, weakening the attack. I'd rather use Luiginary Ball over this, so this attack gets D tier. Luiginary Hammer is the best attack to use to nail a single target. Mario constructs a hammer with Luigi clones by mashing B, but as the hammer wobbles, you must use the arrow buttons to adjust the hammer and prevent it from falling over. You can choose the target you want to slam with a cursor, and the hammer also creates a shockwave which hits all surrounding enemies as well. I love using this one, especially in the boss rush, and for its concentrated damage, it's my favorite Luiginary move, being in S tier. Luiginary Flame involves juggling a fireball to the end of the path by pressing B every time it lands. Occasionally there'll be a gap in the Luigis filled in by Mario, which A must be pressed. At the end, the flame will scatter over all the enemies present. Unlike other fire attacks, this move is actually pretty strong, and the damage is distributed evenly among enemies. Also being quite easy to use, I would give this one a B tier. In the Luiginary Wall, a wall of Luigis encases all the enemies. Mario can whack a spinning hammer Luigi into the enemy group, and this Luigi will rebound off the wall, slowly chipping away at them. Mario can adjust the angle of the spinning Luigi by altering his hammer strikes. If you manage to keep the Luigi in the wall long enough, you could do a final attack that sends a whole wave of Luigis crashing down on all the enemies. This attack is very endearing and fun to look at. It takes quite a bit for the wall to chip away, so you have enough chances to save yourself if you feel the spinning Luigi is going to escape. If you manage to do this attack to the end, it definitely gets at least a B tier here. Last but not least is the Luiginary Typhoon. Mario pulls on a string of Luigis, creating a large Luigi tornado that ravages all the enemies. When they get picked up by the tornado, mash B to deal damage to them with your hammer. You can keep steering the tornado into the enemies you want hurt, and even picking an enemy up at least 3 times during the attack will do huge damage to them. This is the most expensive Luiginary attack, but does a lot of damage and is very useful in clearing the screen. Definitely an A tier, just don't miss time the very start, as I have many a time, or the entire thing will fail. It's now time for the final game, Mario & Luigi Paper Jam. Like Dream Team, Mario and Luigi have 5 Bros attacks each. Paper Mario has 5 trio attacks of his own, which are executed with all 3 Bros together. 4 Bros attacks are actually carried on from Dream Team. The 3D Red Shell has been more streamlined, requiring 6 hits instead of 10, which means this attack finishes faster. The Fire Flower has been reverted from the travesty it was in Dream Team, now functioning like Bowser's Inside Story's Fire Flower. The Drop Chopper no longer uses gyro controls, instead using the arrow buttons to control the propeller. Finally, the Bomb Derby is unchanged from its Dream Team incarnation. Save for the Fire Flower, which gets bumped up into C tier, the other 3 attacks remain in their tiers for this game. For the 6 new Bros attacks, let's start with Rocket Blast. The Bros board a rocket and jump off it onto an enemy in a random order. When you press the second Bros button, the rocket will malfunction and go flying off. Use the control stick to make the rocket loop back around and hit all the enemies on the floor, doing explosion damage to them. This is a 2-step attack that is not hard to execute at all, and I found myself using it quite a bit in the game, being a cheaper alternative to other attacks. I'd give it a good A tier. For the Drill Shell, the Bros hop into the air with a Drill Shell. When you're positioned directly above the enemy, press A to slam down, followed by mashing B to drill into the enemy doing damage. It doesn't do the most damage, but it's a simple attack that costs a little SP, and for that I give this attack a B tier. In Cannonball Chuck, Mario swings a large cannonball, and must time his A press right to throw the cannonball forward. It's just a matter of steering the cannonball with the arrow buttons, and then having it land on the enemies by steering it down when you reach your destination. The cannonball does huge damage to whatever it hits, and also has the added bonus of shockwave damage stemming from wherever it hit the ground. This is a very strong attack deserving a possibly A tier. Just don't whiff the attack at the start, or no damage will be dealt. For Balloon Blast, the Bros will pump a balloon together by jumping like a seesaw. At the peak of a Bro's jump, press their button to slam down on the seesaw and pump air into the balloon. Enough times, and it'll explode and release several smaller balloons, all of them doing little damage to the enemies on the field. It's a fun spectacle seeing all the balloons popping and doing damage to the enemies, but I feel this attack doesn't do as much damage as its counterpart, the Cannonball Chuck, and even attacks you previously obtained can also trump this one, like the Drop Chopper. I would give Balloon Blast a C. Next is Toad Trail. This is a secret ability obtained by rescuing every paper toad in the game, and this is one of the worst abilities I've ever seen. The paper toads make a trail in the sky, and you have to use the circle pad to steer yourself down the path, pressing A to jump over any gaps. The unfortunate thing about this is that it's super easy to fall off, and the game expects you to be holding forward as you're going down the path, which is hard to do when you're also trying to steer at the same time. The damage is good if you happen to reach the end, but the wheel Mario and Luigi form is very small, and won't likely hit all the enemies you wanted to. This attack just reminds me of the Luiginary Ball, which is so much better. I don't play this attack simply because it's so easy to fall off, and for this Toad Trail gets a terrible F tier. A terrible final ability. At least Luigi's complementary attack, Mega Thwonk, is much better. Luigi eats a Mega Mushroom and grows giant. As he starts running, press B every time he makes a footstep to gain speed. Luigi will then whack Mario high into the sky so he stomps on the enemy with great force. Every time Mario makes contact with the enemy, press A until you finally come to a stop. I like that this is a single target attack and incredibly strong to boot. The timing of Luigi's footsteps might be a little tough, but the second part with Mario stomping is much easier, making it a great choice to use against the strong bosses. Mega Thwonk gets an A tier from me. Our final section in this video is Paper Mario's trio attacks. First, the trio racket. This is not too bad. All three bros juggle a ball against the wall hitting the enemies. When the ball bounces towards a bro, press that bro's button. At the end of the attack, there's a finishing move that does a lot of damage. When it's the only attack you have, this trio attack isn't too bad, but it does get outclassed by the other trio abilities, which are much better. Trio racket gets a C tier. Trio Kite is our only single target trio attack. In this attack, build up as much altitude on your kite by mashing the corresponding bro button of whoever's pulling the kite, which switches every few seconds. At the end of the attack, a press of Y will cause Paper Mario to slam the enemy down from as high as you got the kite, doing huge damage. I love how this attack targets a single target, and ignores any resistances of the enemy because it turns into paper. For being a reliable one and a simple button mashing attack, I'd give this an S tier. For the trio whirligig, all three bros will make a spinning propeller that drills straight down. As you head down, all the enemies on the field will appear as pieces of paper, and you must use the arrow buttons to hit them as you pass by. At the bottom, time 4 A button presses correctly to smash through the barricades and drill the enemies into the floor. If you manage to snag every strip of paper on the way down, it does equal damage to all enemies, which is great. Bosses are a bit harder to contain since they split into smaller pieces, and this attack can take quite a long time if there are a lot of enemies on the field. But at the end of the day, it does good damage, and so I give it an A tier. For the trio Shuriken, Mario and Luigi will take turns tossing Paper Mario Shurikens at all the enemies on the field. As they float down in random formations, aim with the reticle and press the bros button to toss the Shuriken, and Y when you make contact to deal extra damage. At the end of the attack, there will be a large finisher where all the pieces of paper will line up at just the right time for you to deliver one final slash. There's not much to say about this attack. It's good at damage dealing and gives you a lot of leeway for mistakes. The pieces of paper take quite a long time to fall. This gets an S tier for sure. And our final attack is Trio Meteor. This is a very unique one, placing all the strips of paper onto a small platform. Paper Mario, Luigi, and then Mario will all fall down on meteors of their own. Use the wind the meteors generate to gather all the strips of paper right under the landing zone and smash them with your meteors. At the very end, a giant finisher meteor will deliver the final strike. It does incredible damage to the enemies, but I'd say it's a bit harder to pull off, as sometimes a piece can get blown a different direction by your wind. It's still too damaging to not put an A tier though. Well, we've reached the end of the list. I've categorically sorted all 105 special attacks throughout the series. All things considered, I think I did a pretty good job. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below what attacks you think are the best, and the ones that you use all the time. When Brothership comes out, I'll likely make a follow-up video, so it'll be fun to revisit these special attacks once more. This video's gone on long enough, so without further ado, I'm out of here. I'm Dan DeLabine, make sure to like and subscribe, and thank you for watching this video.